Hello and welcome to Travel Talk Thursdays. I'm Sean from Journeys Worldwide. Today I'm joined by Graeme Lemon, who is a longtime friend and respected safari professional that I worked with in Zimbabwe many years ago. Graeme is director of an African canvas who specializes in tailored journeys through Ethiopia. He's also a partner at Leopard Springs in Kenya's Laikipia region. We're also joined by Herbie Rosenberg from Africa Reps. Africa Reps represent an African canvas here in Australia. This should be a wonderful conversation about experience-driven travel, responsible tourism, and two regions that deserve far more attention. Graeme, fantastic to have you on the podcast this afternoon. Welcome to Travel Talk Thursdays with Journeys Worldwide.
Thanks, Sean, and good to catch up again. It's been a while.
It has been a while, way too long. I mean, we were working together in Zimbabwe quite a few years ago. It must have been in the 90s. And that was mostly in the Kariba area, if I remember correctly.
Mostly Matusadona.
Beautiful area. Matusadona is amazing.
It's still one of my favorite places in the continent. It really is. The whole thing with Matus and that shoreline and the hills behind was all about the walking safaris, which is what we were there for, really, at the end of the day. No, brilliant.
So how is Zimbabwe? I mean, that's obviously influenced a lot of what you do and how you do it. And so, your guiding culture, your standards. Do you feel that it's influenced a lot of what you've done?
Oh, absolutely. I think, and not putting any other countries down in Africa, because everybody has their own way of doing guides, licenses and exams and things like that. And I think everybody tries their best to make the standards really high. But I still think it's very, very difficult to beat the Zimbabwean standard. I went through it in the late 1980s, the whole way through. And that 3-year apprenticeship of working towards getting that license was amazing. It taught you so much. And we had, I think, possibly some of the best tutors around. The John Stevens, Gavin Fords, Garth Thompsons of the world. I mean, you couldn't get better experience from superb people to put you in the right direction. We'd set up a really good operation in Matus. I started up as a one-man band, eventually brought Steve Carey, a good friend of mine, back into the company, and we built it into something quite significant. We had a little lodge on the lake. We did the walking safaris in Matusadona, and we started a project up in the hills, an old hunting area. We took it on in the hope that we could do some really good walking safaris up in there. And it was one of the most stunning areas I've come across. I do wonder what's happened to today. It was a place called Leopard Springs. You were just so far off the beaten track. It was just amazing.
It's a pity that not more of that happens, isn't it? Because there are some just amazing areas just waiting to be utilized in that regard. And walking safaris, I think, it's certainly one of the things that kept me guiding for so long was doing those walking trips, and it just opens up a whole new chapter in the bush out there. All your senses just come alive, and I just loved it. And I think there's a lot more of them coming up now in different areas. Areas where you can't do your guide. I remember, your area wasn't very good for driving, if I remember correctly.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So just perfect for walking safaris.
But I think it taught us as well that, if you do wander off far away from the madding crowd, as it were, you could find these little special nuggets of places that were just fantastic. And then you made the most of it, what was there. I still, going through Kenya, Ethiopia today, it's all about finding those places that are away from people, that you can start actually developing some sort of responsible tourism as you go in there. And it's still exciting. I mean, that's the thing. As soon as it stops being exciting, then it's time to retire to the golf course. But at the moment, everything is so exciting. You can find these places.
Yeah. So when you left from Australia, where did you go to after that?
And then we moved across to Canada. In Canada, I did a guide's license up in there. So it was all about a mountaineering course, which is why we chose to go across that way.
Okay.
They taught you. It was a little college up in the Rockies. They taught you the sort of basics of mountaineering skills. It was quite a large skill set that they looked at. And on the back of that, I got a season's contract working in the far north, which was absolutely amazing. Incredible country. And again, the Canadians do their guides and things like that differently. Their licensing.
Actually, I remember when we were doing ours, it was a particularly hard there was a very high dropout rate. And I heard that the Canadians at that point was an even harder one. And then from Canada?
So it just, by chance more than anything else ended up coming down to Ethiopia. So we spoke of Mike Pelham earlier. So Mike had set up a company which was looking after exploration for mining companies. It was about setting up camps, and the camps would be anything from 50 man strong to 200 man strong. And he had one in Ethiopia on the Somalia border. And they got hold of me and said, what are you up to at the moment? And I was waiting for a residence permit for Canada and not working. So he said, look, come down here. You'll love it until you get your permit and you can go back again. So I did. I popped down to Ethiopia to go and run their camp. And that was 15 years ago. Still haven't left.
Just changed camps.
Exactly. I mean, it was, that the whole mining setup disappeared after about 3 years after we were there. And we had a bunch of the Zimbabwean guides that came through. Peter Tetlow was sort of running the show. Spike, all those guys came up at one time or other and were helping to camps in Ethiopia. So we had some of the best guides in Zim all up in Ethiopia at the same time. It was amazing to see, amazing to be a part of as well. But once that died off, then I looked back into tourism again and started focusing on putting tented camps up. Ethiopia at that stage was not undiscovered. I mean, it had been discovered, but you had these towns that you could go through to, and you could go and see the different attractions from these places. And the accommodation there was fairly ordinary. So the whole thought was, we'll bring these good old tented camps, like we used to do in Zim, or like the guys do in East Africa, and we'll start putting them up. So we set up the very first tented camps in Ethiopia, the good old A-frame style. I remember the first one was in the Danakil, and talk about being hot. That place was boiling. But we put this tented camp on the edge of the salt pans, and we had all these camel trains pulling the salt out. You're talking 200-300 camels in those days going up to the highlands, just walking straight past the camp. It was stunning.
Unbelievable. And it's obviously been a very rewarding destination for you, because you've stuck it out and you keep going back in there every season.
So it's one of those things. People ask what it's about. If I'd gone straight into Tanzania or Kenya or Zambia or whatever it was, a lot of you'd know a lot of mates went across to Zambia. I think we would always be comparing everything to Zim, and Zim to me was one of it's my home. It's one of the highlights of my life. It always will be. And I didn't want to be there comparing the whole time. You become that Wendy character. This is great, but when we were in Matusudana, it was superb. Ethiopia took that out completely. There was just no chance that you could actually compare, because it is so different. It is not like any other African country that you can travel through to. It's that bridge between the sort of Middle East, because it's right up in the Horn of Africa, and Southern Africa. So we're not into the big game viewing and things like that, the safaris that you would typically have in Kenya and Tanzania and places.
Yeah.
Although Omo National Park is one of the most beautiful parks in Africa, and it's got some good game in there, it's not why people go to the country. And the country's vast. I mean, it's I think twice the size of France. I mean, it's huge. And the diversity that you get in there just enables you to travel and go and find these places and go and find these cultures and these communities where nobody's been before. It's amazing.
It is amazing, and it's just I think one of the things that I always get is just the history there, biblical history and even it's just phenomenal, and those rock churches and all the rest of it are just amazing, and all the different cultures. That there's huge, as you say, there's that like bridge between Middle East and Africa, and you can see that coming in, the Arabian influence coming in there, but then you also see the incredible strong influence of the Bantu coming in on another side. So it's amazing to see the diversity.
I think when people look at Ethiopia, there's 4 different ways that they're going to travel to see it. That religious history up in the north is next to nothing. I mean, you go up into Axum and you look at those stone stelae that have been put up there, and that was from 3rd century BC. Those things are pure granite, and they've been carved with such intricacy. It's just stunning. It's absolutely amazing. You just wonder how these guys managed it in that time. And then, like you say, the rock-hewn churches. I mean, you can do these walks through the Geralta Mountains, which are just stunning, and find these little churches that are carved or hewn into this rock way above the landscape down below, which is brilliant. Landscapes is another one. I mean, there's 17 mountains, I think it is, in Ethiopia, all over 4,000 meters. It's a high country. and they drop down to these riverbeds. The Blue Nile cuts through, the Gemma River cuts through. I mean, you're talking a kilometer or two down into these gorges. It's stunning. It really is. The Danakil Desert, it's another part of it. And when people talk of Ethiopia, they imagine this very, very dry country probably because of the drought of 1984, which really put the country on the map for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
But you go south of Addis, or southwest of Addis. I mean, there's montane or tropical forests just going through there, which are absolutely, amazing. You can drop a seed in the ground and you can have a huge tree tomorrow. It really is incredible.
So, I mean, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that travelers have about Ethiopia from your perspective?
I think that being one of the main ones is that they always imagine that this dry desert where everybody's starving. It's not at all. The diversity, as I said, the country is very, very large. So if you go down to the Somali region in the southeast, it is quite dry. It's more desert-like. You go to the southwest where you get the Gambela Plains, and it's a wetland. African Parks just going to take over that now. And you get these two rivers which come off the highlands and flood this. It's this flooded area that goes all the way to the Sud in South Sudan. So you're getting these migrations coming through, these migrations of cob and things like that. You get shoebills. I mean, I've never seen as many shoebills as I have down in that neck of the woods.
No, seriously, I didn't realize that. Yeah,
amazing. I mean, you can go up to Benguela and Zambia and things like that, or into Uganda, and you'll find shoebills. You go and look for them. In Gambela, you hardly have to look for them. You stumble with it. You need something aerial, a plane or something else going across, because the wetlands are massive. They're huge, and there's no road network in there. But you'll see 10 shoebills, 15 shoebills in a morning flight. No problem at all.
Amazing. And so there's no way you can access those wetlands, like, no boat or anything like that. It's not really navigable.
Rivers. So you've got the Barrow River and the Gilo River. The Barrow River is navigable. So is the Gilo if you put a small boat in it. But in between those rivers is where the wetland is. And so to get into there's big herds of buffalo. You could probably try and follow a buffalo path. I've not tried it yet. It might be an idea. There was one, I think they were a Canadian outfit a few years back, and we didn't support them, but they were looking for oil. So they're doing that seismic work. And they got, those 6-wheeler like buggies.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
They had a couple of those in Addis, and I went into their storeroom and had a look at that, and I thought at the time that we should be getting those, and we never did, because those can access those wetlands. You can get going quite far into there.
Okay. That'll be amazing. Yeah, and no people, no tribes in there?
Yeah, you've got the Nua and the Anuak. So Ethiopia's got, I think, about 83 or 84 different tribal groups. The Nua both Nua and Anuak are on the border with South Sudan, so they cross over into each area. It's the same like if you go into the Omo, you get the Nyangatom and the Dasanich. They're crossing between Kenya, South Sudan. The Suri or the Surma, the Murle of South Sudan and the Surma are pretty much the same sort of family group. So yeah, a lot of tribal groups. So you can do cultural tours in Gambela area as well.
Tell me a bit about an African canvas.
So we set up in timing wise absolutely perfectly. I mean, we couldn't get it better. We set up in April 2020.
There's a little bit of sarcasm there then.
World just suddenly closed down, and we were sitting there with a whole bunch of tents thinking, why isn't anybody coming? So it didn't really work that well in that regard. But I set up a company for another fellow before that, doing tented camps and things. And I just wanted, me from Zim. I've always run my own show, and I wanted to run my own show again, really, at the end of the day. And my business partner, Tim, sort of saw the value in that and said, okay, hold on, we'll support. Let's see what we can do. So we set up an African canvas, which is looking at responsible tourism in Ethiopia. I mean, Ethiopian tourism can be a little bit on edge. You do get a lot of local guides in different areas that are taking people around very, very cheaply, and you're not getting the type of tourism that you want. We've come back from that model of further south where you do low volumes of people coming through high yield, and just make that experience that they get through that they're having one of the best that you can get. So we set it up with the purpose that we were going to go and look into the Omo. The Omo is a rather special area, and the fact that it's got wildlife down there as well was a little bit more enticing for me. And we hooked up with USAID, put a project down in there trying to create a community conservation area, and they asked us to come in there and try and work with the Mercy, which is one of the tribal groups, and see if we can develop a tourism plan. The Mercy are renowned as being possibly one of the most difficult groups to work with. And Sean, I promise you, I never found that. I mean, I thought they were amazing, and they still are to this day. We went in there. They're very direct about what they want. They're very direct about what you're going to provide for them and how this is going to work. But that's not a problem at all. And over the
it's
last,
nice when you know what the parameters are, and you don't have to, fiddle around with it and
yeah,
beat
exactly.
around the bush.
Over the last 3 years or so, we set up a little camp on the river down there, put a boat in there, and we're doing these cultural trips, which the experience is second to none. I mean, it really is. You're dealing with communities which have not had people coming through there before. So it's for them, it's really interesting. I mean, in the camp itself, we let the Mercy come through, and except for the tent areas, where the bedroom areas, they've got free reign of that camp. It's their home. So what a pleasure. And they come up to tourists or ourselves when we go through there, and they're just inquisitive as anything. And it just makes for this experience, which is just brilliant. I mean, really, really brilliant. And then, of course, we've got the river. The Omo River itself is unexplored. It's a big river. I think it's probably 770 kilometers long, flowing just south of Addis all the way down into Lake Turkana. But by the time it passes us, it's got a significant volume, that river. We've got a boat on there so we can go up and down. There's lots of monkeys. There's Brazos monkeys and colobus. We have the elephant occasionally. The way it works is, the Mercy come down to the river to go and harvest at certain times of the year. They collect their harvest and then move back into the higher ground, where it's a lot safer, less problems with diseases, malaria, all things like that. And when they move back to the higher ground, the wildlife moves back down to the river again. And when the Mercy come back to plant on the banks, the wildlife moves back inland. So you get this ebb and flow, which is amazing.
Okay. That is interesting, yeah.
Yeah. So no, we love it. I mean, it's extremely special. And of course, it's not just that. We are a DMC, so we do take people up to Axum, to Geralta, to the Simeon Mountains. The wildlife safaris that people are looking for in Ethiopia are all about the endemics. So you've got the Ethiopian wolves in the Bali Mountains, which is the best place. You get them in Simeons as well. But the Bali Mountains are the one spot. We've got an exclusive site up in Bali now where we've got a camp up. And, we have wolves coming into camp, literally.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
Yeah. When come January, the pups are born, and February, they're coming out of the den sites. And that tends to be our busiest time of year up in Bali, because photographers will obviously come around looking for the wolf pups. And again, stunning experience. The geladas up in the Simeon Mountains are as an ape experience, again, right up there with chimpanzees and gorillas. I mean, you sit with these geladas as they come up over the cliff tops in the early morning. So they're cold. They've been clinging onto this cliff all night trying to dodge the leopards. And they get up there. You sit there. You have them literally all around you, within 2 feet, 1 foot of you. You've got these geladas just sitting, just chatting and just grooming. It's very, very special.
That is amazing. And then no other tourists, I guess, as well.
Not at this time. I mean, Simeons, before COVID, was one of the busier national parks. A lot of people go up to the Simeons. It's
right.
I think the word of the geladas and the views and things like that had got out there. So you will get more people up there. Simeons, Lalibela, and Axum were the three sort of places that everybody would come through to Ethiopia. We started branching outwards to look for new places where people don't go, to go and explore that. So, yeah.
Okay. And I suppose the question that's on everybody's lips really is the security of things, and how you're obviously in and out of there all the time and not a problem. So do you ever have any issues on that side?
No. What with security, and I understand, you're getting all the government departments putting them as red areas. So they advise people not to go to that area, because if something goes wrong, it's difficult for them to go in there take people out or try and resolve the issues that are there. We can't escape the fact that there are political tensions in the country. Absolutely, there are. When we travel around, we've got people in all the different areas that we go to, and we're constantly on the lookout to make sure everything's fine. People talk about the Tigray still. The Tigray war finished 2.5 years ago, I think it was now, and yet it's still in everybody's mind. Oh, the Tigray is unsafe. I mean, I went back into the Tigray about 6 months after they signed the peace accord, and the people of the Tigray are some of the nicest in the country. They're really, really good people. And you go up there, and they were just so welcoming to see us coming back in again. And since then, I've been traveling backwards and forwards without a problem at all. Occasionally there's a little spat in government where it's a federal state, Ethiopia. So you've got a federal government and you've got regional governments. Sort of, I suppose, on the American system, really. The regional governments have a certain amount of autonomy that they can dictate how the rules work within their communities, as it were. But they've still got to come under a federal government umbrella. And sometimes that just causes a little bit of tension coming through as the federal government starts to push its own rules and its own laws coming through. The Amara region over the last year has been an area where there's been a bit of concern about that, but they've, again, just the other day signed an agreement that, they're going to work together to try and resolve it all and make sure it happens. But when we travel, we look at it and we say, okay, if there's an area we're not prepared to go to because there's been a recent flare-up or something, we'll just change the itinerary and go somewhere else. But for the most part, everywhere we go, we've got no problems in getting in there at all.
Okay, yeah. And how do you keep your journey? I mean, I was going to say, how do you keep them small and intimate and so on? But I think, generally that just your numbers are just small. It's like us. We keep our numbers small.
Yeah. So again, going back to the good old Zim days, for walking safaris, you only took a maximum of 6 people, as it were, because that allowed you the control over your group when you're going into the bush. In Ethiopia, we'll take 8. I mean, we will go that little bit higher. We're not doing the walking safaris or facing the sort of danger that we did on walking safaris back in Zim. But 8 is more than enough that you can travel with. When you start getting bigger than that, it becomes hard. People will lose out on getting information, or somebody's always way at the back and they try and catch up and say, well, what was just said there? So they feel that they're going to miss out. So you want to keep a group small enough that you've got them engaged the whole time as you go around.
It's just meaningful, and it's just, yeah.
Absolutely. And the tented camps anyway, the tented camps are designed for smaller groups. You don't really want those big, massive row of tents going through.
No, not at all. And so what does responsible tourism look like for you in your day-to-day world?
So this is one of the critical and key areas for me, because responsible tourism, you have to get the operators themselves understanding what their duties are when they go into these areas. You can't put stuff on the communities. The OMO has got a reputation, 2 reputations, one being absolutely brilliant, the other being it's just not a great place to go because it's all about photographs and local tribespeople's faces, paying for photographs, and it's just this massive melee. It has to be the operators that turn that around. The operators and the guides, and that's all about training, getting people to be aware of what they're going into. I mean, the communities don't know better. The communities want whatever they can get out of it. If you get a group coming through and they can get 100 birr being the local currency, they're going to try and get that 100 birr. Let's face it, anybody would.
Sure. Yeah.
The operators and the guides need to go through, work with those communities. We don't pay for photographs or anything else like that now. But every time we go into village sites, we will take in food, we'll take in coffee and grains, so that there's a meaningful relationship starting to develop. And then you start getting the community saying, okay, well, these guys are fine. They bring us some food and everything when they come through. Let's sit down and have a chat. And they become very relaxed very quickly. And it's something we did with the Mercy. And as I said, we haven't had a problem with the Mercy in all the time we've been down there. We've found that they've been some of the nicest people and most welcoming people, only because of that relationship that you build with them.
Well, it's something I've always, banged on about, is that you've got to have the communities involved in these sort of things. And then in terms of the travelers, are you finding travelers are changing what they're wanting, what their requests are, their requirements?
Yes and no. I think it's very difficult because the travelers are very broad. Okay, so you've got this whole world where you're picking up your client base from. So a lot of people that come through, they are going to want the home comforts that you get. So you can get the very smart lodges and things like that you can go and stay in and start working out from. You're going to get those that come through that want a little bit more adventure. We were talking just now before we started about going through from Ethiopia down into Kenya and just following that sort of trail down the Omo and into Turkana. You're going to get guests that want to do that. I think more people are trying to get off the beaten track. I think there's a lot of, you look at Masai Mara, for example, this year, because of social media, there was a lot of imagery coming out there of, hundreds of vehicles just sitting watching this crossing as it went through.
Yeah.
People don't want that anymore. People are looking for the more exclusive experience where they can go out, really get to know the people that they're traveling with, the communities that they're traveling with. And Ethiopia has taught me that. And, in the past and Zim and that, it was all about the wildlife. You take people out into the wilds and you're on your own. In Ethiopia, you are with communities all the time. It's a very populous country. So your dealings have to be with communities. But the travelers that we've taken through in that, they've embraced that. They really have taken on and said, this is what we want. We've come here to understand what other people live. What are their lives like? So it's been an eye opener for me to start looking at the cultural side of it and start working more with the cultural side of it.
Herbie, from your side, what do you find that the Australian-facing perspective, what's resonating with travelers, agents at the moment in terms of Ethiopia? What are you hearing on the ground?
Well, first of all, Ethiopia is a difficult sell at the moment because our DFAT are still giving it unfair negative advisories. But I'm actually working quite closely with the Ethiopian ambassador, as well as with the Australian ambassador in Addis. Those two are communicating because, if you think about it, the Australian ambassador's brief is to generate investment. And how can you generate investment when your government is saying do not travel? So we're also working quite closely with the Ministry of Tourism in Addis. I actually know the Minister of Tourism personally. He used to be head of the tourism board. So we believe that given another 6 months, the DFAT will change the advisory to make it a little bit less onerous, and that people can at least get insurance when they go into these areas. But also there are certain areas that are not under embargo. For instance, in Addis itself, the Omo Valley, these are open, and we are getting a few people in there. But it's a difficult sell at the moment. But if you think about the tourist, it's very different now post-COVID to what it was pre-COVID. People not, when you talk about luxury, you're not necessarily only talking about the luxury of a room. You're talking about luxury of lifestyle. Luxury, in fact, is time and space.
Space. I think there's a lot of talk about that in social media and stuff about what is luxury, and
correct.
It is, yeah.
Correct. So, and people are also not looking at trying to tick off bucket list stuff in every trip. It's rather spend more time in fewer areas than little time in many areas, and that's a big shift today. And we're seeing that very much in the rest of Africa, particularly southern and central Africa. There's a big shift towards longer stays in fewer camps, and that's makes it much easier for the teams on the ground to cope and not put so much pressure on the guides and the rangers to tick off the big five in a 2-night stay.
Sure.
That's a significant change in the whole philosophy of travel today. And I mean, I speak for Australia specifically because that's where my Australia and Africa. That's my full focus, 100%.
Yes, obviously, yeah.
In a nutshell, that's in a nutshell.
Sure. No, that's great. Thanks, Herbie. And then, Graeme, going back to you, Moving on a bit now. Now you're also involved in Laikipia in Kenya. Can you tell us a bit about that?
So Steve Carey, who was my old partner back in Zim, you remember Steve?
I do remember Steve very well. Yes, yeah.
He came up to Kenya when he left Zim, pretty much the same time, 2004, I think it was. They went to Kenya and started working in there, and have since created a product in the center of Laikipia on that plateau, and it's been amazing. And since with COVID, when COVID came along, I was going down there fairly regularly. And Steve said to me, he said, let's restart what we had in Matusadona. Let's get these walking safaris going. We'll create a small tented camp, beautiful little tented camp, and work out from that. How do you feel? So I said, no, it'd be great, because it'll be a nice add-on to whatever we do up in Ethiopia. We can head down in there as well. So we did. We set up Leopard Springs, which is a stunning little camp, well away from everybody else. You get elephant walking past that camp daily. It's magic, but it's all about the walks. The walking in that area is very special. You get the high ground in Laikipia, where you're going to get your Grant's gazelle, your Thompson's gazelle. You'll get cheetah and ostrich and things like that. And then you're getting the lower valley floors where the rivers run through, where you're getting a lot more leopard, lion, wild dogs and things like that. Plenty of elephant, of course.
And that's all in the Laikipia area.
At Laikipia, the wildlife there is phenomenal. It's really, really good. You're probably not getting the numbers that you're going to find in Masai Mara or Serengeti, but you're certainly getting the variety. You get striped hyenas up in there, grevy's zebra, wild dogs, lions, leopards. It's the best leopard sighting I've seen in all my years in Africa. And of course, they get that melanistic leopard that's in the area. There's probably 7 or 8 of them, is what they think at the moment, which is rather special too. So, as going back to what Herbie said there, the more time you can spend, the better you're going to have. I had a guest there about a year or so ago, and we spent 10 days just on the one property, and we saw literally everything that was there. It was just amazing what we could get. And it was fantastic. With Laikipia, you get the area to yourself, because you're on these sort of ranches, as it were, which have been turned over into conservation projects. And you don't have the numbers that you do going into national parks. So you can escape. You can be driving around all day just on your own, really looking for wildlife.
That's fantastic. That's the best way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So it's for us, it's been a very, very positive step forward as going into Leopard Springs and starting that, and getting back into doing walks and things like that. Oh, brilliant.
We were talking a little bit before we started recording here about possibly one day making a route down through Ethiopia, down through crossing the borders. That would really be pioneering stuff. Can you just run through that again for our listeners out there? To tell them a bit about that. I think to me, I find it fascinating. It's something I'd love to do, and I'm sure there must be people out there who'd love to do it as well.
I'm desperately to get those people out there to come and do it as well. It is fantastic. You go down into the Omo. So where we operate into the Omo, we are away from the madding crowd. We go on the river. So a lot of our work is done by boat. As we go down and we see these different cultures. And there's about 16 different tribal groups in a relatively small area. So you're seeing different ceremonies and things like that as you're going down, as well as meeting the people. When you go through, you do about a week there, and you'll come through to the top of Lake Turkana. So the top of Lake Turkana actually sneaks into Ethiopia. The Omo splits into about the three different rivers as it goes into the lake. And there's a small town there called Omarati. At Omarati, there's an immigration point. So you can actually sign out or sign into Ethiopia through Omarati. So our big plan is to do this trip where we're going through the cultures, which is, the Omos, they reckon probably the second richest cultural area worldwide, only after Papua New Guinea, which is amazing as well. So you do that, you pop into Omarati, get signed out, and cross the border into Kenya. Now you've got Lake Turkana, which is this wilderness area in Kenya, which is, again, incredibly stunning. They've got national parks in there. You're finding a lot of fossils. The Leakey Foundation base up in there as well. Yeah. And then you've got the northern Kenya tribal groups that you'll find. But as you go down the lake, you're starting to get more and more into wildlife areas as well. So you get this gradual passing over from cultural to purely wildlife. Well, not totally, because even in Laikipia, you'll get the Samburu, which are always good to go and have a meeting or drink a tea or coffee with the Samburu as well. But you're starting from very, very cultural to more and more wildlife as you go down. It would be a journey where you're off the beaten track completely. I mean, you really are. There's a couple of camps up in the top end of Kenya where you can go and stay at. on the way down to Laikipia. And we'd do that. I mean, we'd have to get an aircraft or something else like that to pick up on the Kenyan side of the border so we can go and get stamped into Kenya and then carry on that journey coming down. I think it would be amazing. You're not going to see people. You talk about time and space and things like that. Plenty of space up in there and plenty of time.
That's what it's all about, yeah.
Yeah, I reckon it could be one of the best trips that you'd do in Africa. I mean, it certainly has the potential.
It sounds amazing. I'd certainly love to be on that one. Just got to get out of the office.
You're a recce. I think Herbie wants to do a recce as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Really, really good. How long do you think that trip would take?
I'd do it in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay.
Nothing short of 2 weeks, because you'd need that first week in Ethiopia and the second week in Kenya, and your last 3 or 4 days should really be at Laikipia when you're actually focusing on finding wildlife as well.
And so that time would be spent not just traveling; there would be time spent experiencing the tribes and then a bit of wildlife and so on at the end as well.
So on the week in Ethiopia, you do probably 3 different camps, and then the same as you go down into Kenya, you probably do 3 different camps. So 6 camps over a 2-week period.
Okay, so 2-3 nights in each camp.
Yeah, exactly.
That sounds good. It sounds really good. Yeah. Just to try and wrap up a little bit now, what would you like Australian travellers to understand more about Ethiopia in particular, and possibly Laikipia?
Embrace the culture of Ethiopia. I mean, Ethiopia, I had a couple of American guests come through a few years ago now, and at the end of it, they said to me, Graeme, we've been to Africa 12 times now, and this is the first time we felt that we've really been to Africa. You need to be adventurous. You can't be sort of sitting in the Singita class where I'm going to sit in a luxury lodge and drink champagne all day and watch wildlife and things like that. That's not going to happen. Ethiopia is renowned for not having the best accommodation in different areas, but it's comfortable, and as long as you're comfortable, you make it all about the experience. So if you embrace that culture when you go out there, you will have such a good trip because the culture is so different to everything else and people in Ethiopia are very, very friendly. They are happy to see people coming through, but don't expect a 5-star luxury trip all the way around. It's not going to be that. Be prepared to put up with adventure, and you're going to have an incredible safari. Really, I mean, I seriously mean that. Everybody I get coming through who leaves at the end of it, they just go, wow. Hard to put it into words because they see so much, they do so much, and it's all so personal.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, Graeme, thanks very, very much. And I hope the weather up there in Bonnie, Scotland improves for you for today. And really good catching up with you again. And then hopefully we'll catch up again someday across in Ethiopia or Laikipia. Excellent. And Herbie, thank you for joining us as well. And we're certainly in touch all the time, and we'll be in touch over the week, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Thanks for including me. I really appreciate it. And wonderful to catch up with you again, Graeme.
Good to see you, Herbie.
We'll catch up again soon.